Okay, so this is the diversion. Butler is basically winding all these men up by insulting them and starting a fight. It was the last straw. The men howled and attacked as one. If they'd been paying any attention to their adversary, their opponent, i.e. Butler, in that moment before contact, they might have noticed that he shifted his weight to lower his centre of gravity, which is a boxer's pose. You sort of put your feet wide and then you crouch down a bit, okay? It makes you harder to knock over. They might also have seen that the hands he drew out of his pockets were the size and approximate shape of spades. But no one was paying attention to Butler, too busy watching their comrades making sure they weren't alone in the assault. The thing about a diversion is that it has to be diverting, big, crude. Not Butler's style at all. He would have preferred to take these gentlemen out from 500 metres with a dart rifle. Failing that, if contact was absolutely necessary, a series of thumb jabs to the nerve cluster at the back of the neck would be his chosen modus operandi. Quiet as a whisper, so just sort of knocking them out. He's obviously learnt all these kind of martial arts techniques. So a punch to the... Anyway. But that would be defeating the purpose of the exercise. So Butler went against the training, screaming like a demon and utilising the most vulgar combat actions. Vulgar they may have been, but that's not to say they weren't effective. Perhaps the Shaolin priest could have anticipated some of the more exaggerated movements, but these men were hardly trained adversaries. In fairness, they weren't even completely sober, meaning they'd been drinking. A Shaolin priest, meaning somebody who is really expert at martial arts. Butler dropped the first with a roundhouse punch. Two more had their heads clapped together, cartoon style. The fourth was, to Butler's eternal shame, dispatched with a spinning kick. But the most ostentatious was saved for the last pair. The manservant rolled onto his back, caught them by the collars of their donkey jackets, and flipped them into Dublin harbour. Big splashes, plenty of wailing. Perfect. Two headlights poked from the black shadow of a cargo container, and a government saloon, which is a car, screeched along the quay. As anticipated, a customs and excise team on stakeout. Butler grinned with grim satisfaction and ducked around the corner. He was long gone before the agents had flipped their badges or begun inquiries. Not that their interrogations would yield much. As big as a house was hardly an adequate description to track him down. By the time Butler reached the car, Artemis had already returned from his mission. "Well done, old friend," he commented. "Although I'm certain your martial arts sensei is turning in his grave. A spinning kick? How could you?" Butler bit his tongue, reversing the four-wheel drive off the wooden works. As they crossed the overpass, he couldn't resist glancing down at the chaos he had created. The government men were hauling a sodden docker from the polluted waters. Artemis had needed this diversion for something, but Butler knew there was no point in asking what. His employer did not share his plans with anyone until he thought the time was right. And if Artemis Fowl thought the time was right, then it usually was. Root emerged shaking from the pod. He didn't remember it being like this in his time. Although, truth be told, it had probably been an awful lot worse. Back in the Shilet, I need to find out how to say this word. I shall look it up. Back in the old days, there was no fancy polymer harnesses, no auto thrusters, and certainly no external monitors. It was just a gut instinct and a touch of enchantment. In some ways, Root preferred it like that. Science was taking the magic out of everything. He stumbled down the tunnel into the terminal. As the number one preferred destination, Tara had a fully fledged passenger lounge. 6 shuttles a week came in from Haven City alone. Not on the flares, of course. Paying tourists didn't like to be jostled around quite that much, unless, of course, they were on an illegal jaunt to Disneyland. The fairy fort was crammed with full moon overnighters complaining about the shuttle suspensions. A beleaguered sprite was sheltering behind her ticket desk, besieged by angry gremlins. "There's no point hexing me," squealed the sprite. "There's the elf you want right there." She pointed a quivering green finger at the approaching commander. The gremlin mob turned en route, and when they saw the triple-barreled blaster on his hip, they kept right on turning. Root grabbed the PA stand from behind the desk and hauled it out to the extent of its cable. "Now, hear this," he growled, his gravelly tones echoing around the terminal. "This is Commander Root of the LEP. We have a serious situation above ground, and I would appreciate cooperation from all you civilians. First, I would like you to all stop your yapping so I can hear myself think." Root paused to make certain his wishes were being respected, and they were. "Secondly, I would like every single one of you, including those squalling infants, to sit down on the courtesy benches until I have gone on my way. Then you can get back to griping or stuffing your faces, or whatever else it is civilians do." No one had ever accused Root of political correctness. No one was ever likely to either. "And I want whoever's in charge to get over here. Now." Root tossed the stand onto the desk. A blare of whistling feedback grated on every eardrum in the building. Within fractions of a second, an out-of-breath elf, goblin hybrid, was bobbing at his elbow. "Anything we can do, Commander?" Root nodded, twisting a thick cigar into the hole beneath his nose. "I want you to open a tunnel straight through the place. I don't want to be bothered by customs or immigration. Start moving everybody below after my boys get here." The shuttle port director swallowed. "Everybody?" "Yes, that includes terminal personnel. And take everything you can carry. Full evacuation." He stopped and glared into the director's mauve eyes. "This is not a drill." "You mean?" "Yes," said Root, continuing down the access ramp. "The mud people have committed an overtly hostile act. Who knows where this is going?" The elf-goblin combo watched as Root disappeared in a cloud of cigar smoke. An overtly hostile act? It could mean war. He punched in his accountant's number on his mobile. Okay, I'll stop there. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Okay, bye.